What's up everybody, it's Galmadex and welcome to the Ravnica Guild Battle. Today I'll be playing the Boros Legion pre-constructed deck and trying to race to 6 wins as fast as I can as a little bit of a tip/tutorial to you guys. I think the Boros Legion deck is definitely one of the best decks. It is a really good, fast, aggressive deck that can also do a little bit more in the late game than some of the other decks, like the Rakdos deck, which was the deck that I initially thought was going to be pretty fun, but Rakdos just had a very weak late game that was constantly getting destroyed by some of the other more mid-range or later guilds. So this special event is a event in which everybody is using a pre-constructed deck of the guild of their choice. Most of the decks are very good. They are all based on the guild of choice. It's a lot of the most iconic cards in the guild. Of course, they're a little more like draft decks than constructed decks. They have multiple copies of the commons and uncommons, but only one of each rare in most of these decks. So, yeah, basically I would just pick whatever guild you like the most, and the gameplay is going to be pretty similar to what you're used to in that guild. And yeah, they're all pretty evenly matched for the most part. So let's hop into this event here. I will have the Boros Legion deck list in the description, as this is the deck that I'll be using. As for the other deck lists, I might have a link in the description to all of them, if I can find one on like a good site. Otherwise, if you literally just boot open Arena, in the top left corner of the event, you can check out all of the deck lists for yourself. So this is not the worst hand in the world. A little bit weird because everything in here costs 2 mana, so we don't have a curve per se. We're just going to be casting a bunch of 2-drops, but still, it's a bunch of powerful cards here. So I'm going to start off with the Swiftblade Vindicator. So we're against blue. We don't know what blue deck we're playing against. There are a lot of them. Looks like we're against Dimir here, so Swiftblade Vindicator probably not going to be around very long. The Dimir deck is a controlling kind of deck, very heavily built around the Surveil mechanic. Let's go ahead and go with Sunhome Stalwart and with Goblin Banneret over the Healer's Hawk, since they do have a flyer out. Flying is not the most relevant thing in the world. I'll take the guy that can pump up my other stuff with its mentor ability. And maybe we can really juice up the Swiftblade Vindicator. Alright, this is going to be a fantastic turn. Since they had no removal here, we're going to double pump the Swiftblade Vindicator. If I can stack these things correctly, it's going to be a little bit difficult because I'll have to stack the Sunhome Stalwart trigger to happen first, and then the Banneret trigger. So let's see if this will work out. If I say all attack, I want to choose resolution order. I want Sunhome Stalwart's ability to resolve first, so I'll do that. So we're going to put a counter on Vindicator, and counter on Vindicator. Bam! So it is a 3/3 double strike Vigilance Trample on turn 3. Or maybe turn 4. I didn't really count. But it's massive. And it's big damage, and we have a lot of creatures out on the field here. Opponent is down to 12, and the Dimir deck does not have any Wrath of God style effects. They only have single removal spells. The Orzhov deck does have Kaya's Wrath. The Azorius deck has Time Wipe. But the Dimir deck only has removal that'll hit one thing at a time, rather than an entire field. So double Night Veil Sprite with the Whispering Snitch is a really nice combo. They'll be gaining a lot of life from me this game, but hopefully we can just get around that by having a lot of mentor stuff here. Goblin Banneret's probably gonna trade with one of their guys here. I think I'm okay with that. I am going to just use its ability to pump up Stalwart to a 3/3. I'm not insanely worried about my life total, so I feel like I don't really need to give the flyer extra power here. rather just give it to the first strike guy to get in that extra damage, because now our creature on the ground can't just be blocked by a Whispering Snitch forever. They will have to lose a creature whenever they block it. See how they block here. Looks like they will trade the Night Veil Sprite for my Goblin Banneret and take 5. Opponent's getting pretty low on life. We're going to go ahead and play a Boros Challenger. Just keep playing Mentor creatures. That's the general strategy. Next turn, if they tap out, I could pump up Boros Challenger to Mentor the Healer's Hawk again and just keep letting my creatures get larger and larger. Otherwise, I'll just play some of my other creatures. Whispering Snitch and a Thought-Bound Phantasm. This Night Veil Sprite has put in a lot of work for our opponent, triggering a lot of surveil abilities. Lava Coil is a pretty fantastic draw. I can get rid of that Night Veil Sprite right now if I don't want them getting any more life, or I can just get rid of that Thought-Bound Phantasm to make attacking here a lot easier. Even if I get rid of the Thought-Bound Phantasm, it doesn't actually change combat that much, because Sunhome Stalwart can already get in there. But that Phantasm will keep getting bigger and just become really problematic, so I'm just going to hit the Phantasm. I'm still not worried about the Whispering Snitches. They are gaining them life with the Night Veil Sprite. But I do have the Healer's Hawk to just gain all of that life right back. They're going to go to 2 there. Now I'm dropping down Legion Guildmage. Can tap a creature for 3, or for 6 can deal 3 to each opponent. That should be very nice. See what you got. 2 cards in hand for our opponent. Night Veil Sprite going in there, gonna gain him 2 life, up to 4 here. We have 4 attackers though, all with at least 2 powers, so they'll need to have another blocker out, or they are dead on board. Of course, they could have some instant speed removal. The Dimir deck does run an artful takedown or 2. Deadly Visit at sorcery speed instead. That definitely works. Also gains him 2 more life, puts him back up to 6. Lets him surveil 2 to set up their draws. Try to get out of this mess. Sunhome Stalwart will definitely be pumping up Healer's Hawk here, though. And I'm going to go ahead and play Roc Charger. Tapping down a Whispering Snitch doesn't change a whole lot here. They are most likely going to chump block with 1. Blocking with 2 doesn't do anything more than blocking with 1 does, so we don't need our mana to tap 1 down. Alright, they're down to 1. We now have a Roc Charger out, so we can have 3 creatures with flying attacking our opponent, and there is the scoop. So a very strong start from the Boros deck. It was pretty hard for the Dimir deck to recover, because if you get a strong start with the Boros deck, your creatures just keep getting larger. And there's a lot of momentum with that kind of strategy, so it's a very nice deck for sure. And I forgot to mention earlier, the reason that you're going for the 6 wins is because you get a beautiful full art forest at 6 wins. This event is pretty fantastic value. It's completely free. You get 1,000 experience the first time you win, and you only need to win 6 times. It doesn't matter how many times you lose to get that full art forest. So definitely a great event in terms of value for players. It's also great for if you don't have a whole lot of cards in your collection yet, if you're pretty new to the program, or the game, I should say. You don't need to have a lot of cards to do well in this event. You get to play from literally just the pre-constructed decks that everyone else is playing with. Everyone has the same options to choose from. So another pretty good hand I'm going to go ahead and keep. Just a couple 2-drops along with a pretty good late game card here. This can actually just kill an attacking or blocking creature, or it can give me an additional combat step, which is very cool, as well as giving all my creatures first strike and vigilance. Healer's Hawk is going to start it for our opponent. Could be against another Boros deck, or could be against Selesnya. Have to see. Looks like we are against Selesnya. Selesnya, another pretty strong early aggressive deck. Just has a lot of cheap creatures like your Healer's Hawks, and a pretty good late game just with Convoke cards like March of the Multitudes and stuff like that that could be huge later on. Well, now I just have double Lava Coil at the ready. I feel like the game is definitely telling me to Lava Coil that Healer's Hawk. I'm not going to quite yet, though. I will play my own Healer's Hawk as well as a Boros Challenger, and then perhaps next turn I will finally Lava Coil something. We are getting the Mentor chain going, especially if I draw a basic land here. I can pump up Boros Challenger to mentor Sunhome Stalwart, which will mentor Healer's Hawk. You can get a lot of stuff going if they don't have a kind of disruption here. Conclave Tribunal it is for our opponent. Going to go ahead and exile our Boros Challenger to stop the Mentor shenanigans before they really start. And unfortunately for us, there is the basic land, so it would have been a pretty large turn if they didn't have that Conclave Tribunal, thanks to Boros Challenger's ability. So, we don't have a lot better to do, so I am gonna just exile that Healer's Hawk. At the very least, it keeps them off a little bit of mana in terms of Convoke. Every creature they have is basically another land for their Convoke spells. So we kind of just killed a land there, which is pretty important because I think they did miss a land drop. They're at 4 mana now. The second we hit another land, this Resurgence could be pretty exciting. But for now, at least we're not fighting any creatures. Just get in there. Selesnya deck definitely does not have any instant speed creatures to worry about. Or a whole lot at instant speed for that matter. They do have some instant speed pump spells, like Might of the Masses, and there's a white one that gives like +2/+2. I think they have that as well. Alright, so I can Lava Coil that or get 2 combat steps. How good would 2 combat steps be here? Oh, it'd be really good. That thing doesn't have flying. Alright. Just had to do the simple math of Roc Charger gives 1 creature flying, and I have 1 creature that does not have flying. Right, and there is the scoop for our opponent. Or from our opponent, and it would be lethal. It would be 12 damage exactly. They were at 11, so another just great game from the Boros deck. I think it's pretty good. I don't know if it's the best deck. A lot of the decks are pretty nice, but in terms of just getting the games done fast with a nice aggro deck, if you just want to get your 6 wins and get out of there, I'd definitely recommend this Boros deck. Played a lot of games with the Rakdos deck before this, so I am confident in saying that I like the Boros deck a lot better than the Rakdos one. And the Selesnya deck seems pretty nice as well, if that's your cup of tea. So this hand, once again, very good. This looks actually better than the first 2 hands for sure. And actually, Swiftblade Vindicator into Tajic is hilarious. This hand just keeps getting better. One thing I would definitely say for this format, during combat, always expect a pump spell. The vast majority of the decks have a lot of pump spells. So we're going to go ahead and start off, well, not a lot, but at least like 4 pump spells in like every deck. We're going to start out with this Tajic and Swiftblade Vindicator combo, and we're going to see if it's even possible for our opponent to come back from this. The Gruul decks are just a lot of decently priced, thick creatures like 2 mana 3/3s, 3 mana 4/4s, and so on. Not a whole lot on the control front, so I think the worst that can happen here really is that they play a big creature, and that's not actually that bad of a situation, especially with Integrity and Response Resurgence at the ready to just make things awful for our opponent. So I expect if our opponent is the kind of player that concedes, they might concede this turn. Let's see what happens. Because this is just going to be brutal. Alright, here we go. Integrity it is. That's gonna be a metric shit ton of damage. I actually could have had lethal there. If I cast Response to deal 5 to that creature and trampled over for the rest, that actually would have been exact lethal, but I did not. So now we'll just play Sunhome Stalwart. The Gruul deck really does not have an answer to this at this point, so it's still going to win the game there, but could have won in turn earlier. Frenzied Erranx it is, 4 mana, 4/4 trample, and it does some stuff. We'll just Act of Treason that, just to make things simple. Now all I gotta do is click all attack done, and the game is over. Act of Treason was just the salt in the wound draw at that point. That was just brutal.
Beg for mercy.
So we're gonna have Vraska as our random uncommon prize for getting some wins today, and we're already halfway there. That is 3 wins. I started today with 6 wins out of the way, so now we are at 9 total wins. That's 3 wins with the Boros deck, 0 losses still, which is kind of surprising. Maybe I lost and I just erased it from my mind. That could have happened. But yeah, Boros deck is definitely kicking butt and taking names. And we're halfway there. Alright. Once again, it's so hard to draw a bad hand with this deck, I feel like. This hand also looks just great. Turn 1 Healer's Hawk into Sunhome Stalwart to mentor onto it. Legion Warboss is a brutal card on turn 3 if we draw the basic in time. Got Justice Strike to deal with a creature that's too large for us to deal with otherwise. And a Skyknight Legionnaire just for 4 aggressive creatures. So we'll see what our opponent is playing. Starts off with a Plains. So it could be... Ooh, that's actually a different Plains than our Plains. So if you actually memorize the Plains, you'd actually know what they're playing. So they're playing Ravnica Legion, so they are Orzhov or Azorius. It looks like we're playing against Orzhov. This could be a pretty scary matchup. Orzhov has a lot of very good removal. They have Kaya's Wrath in their deck. I think they have multiple Mortifies. Lots of stuff like that. They're definitely the best deck at killing creatures. But do I want to just get in there for damage, or do I want to get the Warboss out here? Which of those would be better? I could also just shoot that Pontiff right now. Let's just get in there for damage, be as aggressive as possible. Because they can't really block my Stalwart here, so they're just going to take 6 off this swing. Right, 3 mana, here comes Imperious Oligarch. A pretty good combo with that Pitiless Pontiff. They can give that thing Death Touch and Indestructible by sacking the Oligarch, and also just get a 1/1 in the air off of it. So, very spicy card. I'm actually just going to go to combat and try to just Justice Strike that Pitiless Pontiff in response to them sacking something to it, if that is the route they want to go here. Because I think I would really like to get that thing just out of the way. They're going to take 4 in the air because they did not sacrifice the Afterlife creature until they declared the block. And now I'm going to kill the Pitiless Pontiff. And there's the scoop. Got the Pontiff out of the way. Just paved the way for all my other creatures off of a pretty aggressive start with that 6 damage on turn 3. And looks like that's too much for our opponent to handle. Just hop right into another game, 4 wins down, 2 to go. Boros deck is absolutely looking like the way to go if you want to get these 6 wins to get that beautiful forest. Alright. This might be the weakest hand we've drawn so far. It has a 6 mana card in it. It's definitely a bit slow. We do have a 1-drop into a 2-drop, so there's a little bit of a curve, but definitely not a fantastically aggressive hand here. More of a slower one. So we'll see how this pans out. This will definitely give our opponent some time to breathe. So if they have a pretty good hand of their own, they could absolutely overpower this, I feel. Depending on how we draw. It's like a mulligan from our opponent. Alright, opponent mulligans just down to 6, not any further than that. And they're on the draw, so they will be back up to 7 cards at the start of their turn here. Mountain from our opponent. And it looks like it is a Guilds of Ravnica mountain. Could be Izzet, could be Boros. We'll have to see. Looks like we're playing against Izzet. Interesting. This is going to be the very first Izzet deck I've played against all day. I did like the looks of the Izzet deck on paper. It looked pretty cute. Definitely the only deck that was more of an interesting strategy than just like aggro or control style stuff. Definitely very centered on instant sorcery cards. So I don't know why I paid for the Sacred Foundry there. I'll just pretend that I did it to scare my opponent. But really, there's not much of a reason to have paid. I only need to spend 1 mana here. I guess that way I could potentially use Legion Guildmage's ability instead of attacking if I wanted to. But since I was just attacking, that was kind of just an auto play. Just off my mind. So we'll see what our opponent has here. Next turn, we will have the mana to cast Intervention to just get that Steamkin out of the way here, to not have to worry about it. Or the Electromancer, actually. Either one of those. Whichever is scarier. Both are pretty scary. Lava Coil here off of making the spell cheaper with Electromancer, so it's pretty bad. I can't even pump up Guildmage to save it. That'll just make it 4 toughness. Pretty nice start for the Izzet deck here, bashing in for a lot of damage. Steamkin's pretty soon just going to be a 4/4. Here's a Boros Challenger. I can pump up the Healer's Hawk. I'm just trying to decide if it's better to drop that Challenger out here and just accept that I get hit by the Steamkin again, or just kill the Steamkin. Electromancer also seems like a pretty important card, just making all their instants and sorceries cheaper. I think I'm going to play it a little slower here. We'll just deal with that Steamkin while we still can. The second they play 1 more red spell, that thing's a 4/4. And we just won't be able to kill it. So just get it out of the way. Here comes Augur of Bolos from our opponents. Checking out the top 3, looking for an instant or sorcery. Unfortunately, they missed. It's like they don't get to draw any cards off of that Augur. Keep hitting them with the Healer's Hawk. Just a slow little back and forth here till I can cast this Light of the Legion. Hopefully Light of the Legion does a lot of work for us. That is definitely the win con we are planning on here. Opponent does seem to be stuck on 3 mana. So it's quite possible Light of the Legion is just going to be the biggest card cast this game from either of us. Could just end things. That is what I'm hoping for. Opponent's going to the Think Tank here. They did get their 4th land to a Lava Coil on the Boros Challenger. 2 cards left in their hand. Here comes a League Guildmage. Pretty great card when you're in a position like they seem to be in, where they're basically out of cards, but they do have a little bit of mana to just start sinking into that card each turn. They can now spend 4 mana and draw a card each turn. Hopefully it's not going to be fast enough, though, since we do have 7 damage coming at them next turn in the air. And Skyknight Legionnaire is a brutal draw that's going to turn it into 9 damage in the air coming at them. So they're going to need multiple removal spells. They have to be able to kill Light of the Legion and one of our other flyers to survive this. Because if Light of the Legion dies, my other flyers both get a +1/+1 counter. Then I have two 3/3 flyers against an opponent at 4 life. They're going to need something very nice to get out of this one. It's looking like the draws just have not lined up well enough for them. They are thinking for sure. There is a Crackling Drake, but that is game. They can block the Light of the Legion and take 4. Alright. That is going to be our 5th victory with the Boros deck, I believe. Boros Legion stands victorious yet again. 11 wins, which means, what, 6 + 5 is 11? So that's 5 wins down, 1 more to go. And we will have gotten the 6 wins and unlocked the forest if I hadn't already done it. I did record the first time that I was playing, which was primarily with the Rakdos deck. But it was a very bad time. I don't think it would have made the most interesting or exciting video there because there were a lot of pretty long games of me just hoping to draw a skewer off the top with my opponent at 3 and just not. just taking like 20 minutes just to die. So it was a bad time. The Rakdos deck looks really sweet on paper, but once you get the draws, a lot of awkward hands are pretty possible, like this one. This is a pretty awkward hand for the Boros deck. This is what a lot of my Rakdos hands were looking like, just weird, not very sensical stuff like this. So I'm going to go ahead and mulligan this. And this hand's a lot more palatable. We have a Lava Coil to get rid of something early in the game. Truefire Captain will be really nice on turn 4. I'm actually just going to put Light of the Legion on the bottom here, unfortunately. Do want all of those lands. Opponent did have to mulligan as well. It's waiting on them to make their decision. See what it comes to here. Definitely hope that I'm playing against something creature-based. If I'm playing against like Azorius or something and they just play like their 2/5 guy and nothing else, then this Lava Coil is going to be pretty bad. But the vast majority of the decks are creature-based. Even the controlling decks have a decent amount of creatures in this format. Like the Azorius deck does just have, you know, the Senate flying thing, the 4-mana 3/2 flyer, and stuff like that. Looks like we're against Simic. This could be a pretty scary matchup in a hand like this that stumbles a bit in the early game. The Simic decks have a very strong late game. They're just nice mid-range style builds. They just dump out a bunch of creatures early in the game, and as it progresses, now they've got all their extra mana to start dumping into some strong adapt abilities. But hopefully Truefire Captain plus Roc Charger should be pretty nice beef here. See what our opponent does. Unfortunately, we did just draw more lands, so it looks like I should have definitely just put a land on the bottom instead of that Blade of the Legion if I was prophetic and knew exactly what I'd be drawing in the future. Our opponent might have a Biomancer's Applied Biomancy, it's called. There's 3 copies of that in the Simic deck, I believe. It's +1/+1 to a creature and bounce another creature back to its owner's hand, so it can slow me right down. Looks like they're just going to play a creature here, though. Very spicy creature to play, though. They get to play that Incubation Druid and immediately have it come out with a counter on it. So that thing already taps for 3 mana. Any type. So we did draw an Aurelia, which is really nice. Yeah, I don't think I'm going to Lava Coil anything then. I'll just cast this Aurelia. Let's see. +2/+0 and trample if it's red, vigilance if it's white. Obviously, yeah, just throw that on Truefire Captain, because it's both. Use Roc Charger to give Truefire Captain flying. Should be a massive attack. However, opponent is going to have a massive turn after this. We'll just see if it can be as big as this. They've got 7 mana right now. If they play another land, they'll have 8. This Simic deck does have Hydroid Krasis in it, which is a very strong card you might know from Standard. A green, a blue, and X for a XX flying trample, and they gain half of X life and draw half that many cards. Very strong card. However, this is actually just top decking that Aurelia has turned this into an absurdly strong start. They're going to need some really good stuff to shut off the tempo we've had so far. They could have multiple applied Biomancies, would actually work out pretty well for them. Just dump the Truefire Captain back into our hand and just try to get aggressive against us, but it's going to be a hard comeback for sure. Opponent might have just left. They might have just walked away, and that is why the timeouts are occurring right now. That is a definite possibility. Perhaps they really had to go to the restroom. Perhaps they saw Aurelia and then just gave up and wanted me to feel the pain. Waiting through the timers here. Moment of truth. We'll see if they actually left or if they're just timing me out here. Alright, they actually were just AFK there for a while. The entire rope went down. They might be completely AFK for whatever reason. I don't want to assume that they're just BMing me. They could very well have lost connection or something like that. You really never know. But it is definitely starting to look like, thanks to that fantastic draw of Aurelia off the top, we're going to just 6-0 with Boros today. Once again, unless I erased a loss from my mind. It could have happened. I do that sometimes. Just completely forget about the bad stuff. But I think that we've literally won every game that we've played in this video. Because the Boros deck is just putting in actual work here. Opponent is going to rope again. Alright, here's Integrity and Intervention. Just shoot the flyer, and this is far more than lethal if that flyer's out of the way. Plus, this will get that rope to show up again. I think if they fail the rope one more time, it auto-concedes. I think it's 3 auto-fails before it concedes you out of the game. So let's find out. For science. Heartbeat's pounding, it's getting close! There is the auto concession. So, very, very powerful plays from the Boros Legion deck here. It might be the most powerful one, in my opinion. I could be wrong about that, but it has just put in some great work for me. I think I started using it after 4 rounds of playing the Rakdos deck. Well, a lot more than 4 rounds. After 4 wins with the Rakdos deck. And just won almost every game from there. So definitely recommend that for just a fast, aggressive deck that can absolutely earn you those wins. Get you towards that beautiful forest. But other than that, I mean, the decks are all... They have their own pretty strong stuff they can do. There are killer hands in all of these decks. I mean, any Orzhov hand where you have a Kaya's Wrath is just ridiculous, because you can't really play against the Wrath of God in a format like this. And yeah, as you can see from the artwork, they all have very powerful cards. Izzet deck does have Niv Mizzet. The Azorius deck has Deputy of Detention along with Time Wipe and stuff like that. Simic deck does have Hydroid Krasis. They're all pretty fun, pretty flavorful decks with just a lot of good cards from the guilds. So thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you again soon for some more Magic Arena stuff. Hope you have fun with the event. I certainly had a decent amount of fun in this video, just crushing people with Boros. Not as much fun with the Rakdos deck, if I'm being completely honest. But it's definitely a cool event. Very interesting to see them adding events where you play with pre-constructed decks rather than cards in your own collection, and I'd like to see what they do with that in the future. Could be really cool if they add in, I don't know, there's just a lot of stuff you could do with that. Like maybe even after like a big Mythic Championship, they could do a special event where like the top 8 decks from the Mythic Championship are the decks you can choose from for the event, and it's just like the Mythic Championship replay event or something like that. That could be cool. Because then you're just playing with like the best decks with Standard just to try them out without having to spend all the wild cards for them. That could be a really cool deck idea. And then also, obviously, just making a bunch of different, flavorful, interesting decks could be fun too, like this little Ravnica guild battle here. So, once again, thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you again soon.